The next month of the UFC is going to be nothing but slop. And we've just gotten news that a big fight has fallen off of UFC 315. Joel Alvarez has pulled out of his fight with Benoit Saint-Denis due to an injury. And now the card that was just holding on for dear life, that was just a tiny bit better than mid, is trash. And it could have all been avoided if the UFC didn't make an entire Apex card to steal fights from it, just so that they can have another fight night where that they can run ads all night. Yeah, here's some ads, fucker. Here's some ads. And I wasn't going to make a video about this. MMA Guru made a really good video about this. He made a long video about Dana White and how Dana White is no longer focused on the UFC, and it's pathetic. Well, I wasn't going to make a video until I saw this today. Dana White is promoting Canelo versus Terence Crawford. This is not just like that Irish guy, I forget his name, Callum Walsh, that he's been promoting. This is like one of the biggest fights in boxing history. And there is the UFC president, the UFC's number one promoter, the face of the UFC, promoting his arch nemesis, boxing. He's always been competing with boxing. Dana White has, for the past 10 years, been telling us how the UFC is just crapping all over boxing, destroying boxing. You know, how many times have you heard Dana White at a press conference say, that's boxing, and kind of shit on it a little bit? Here he is promoting Canelo and Terence Crawford instead of Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria, which is like the equivalent to this. Terence Crawford moving up a weight class to fight Canelo. Ilia Topuria moving up a weight class to fight Islam Makhachev. Dana White could be hyping that fight up because that might go down at UFC 317 International Fight Week, but that's only 6 weeks away. No. 6 weeks away. We'll start promoting that the week of. We'll promote it with Embedded, if we even get it. This is pathetic. It's gone too far. Dana White is completely checked out. He's focusing more and more on boxing. He's been basically MIA when it comes to promoting anyone other than John Jones. And I think it's time that we get a new promoter. We need someone new. We need someone that actually cares. And listen, it's clear that Dana White sold a lot of his UFC shares a long time ago and he doesn't have as much stake in the game. So I understand it, but at the same time, the UFC has gotten too comfortable. And this is going to directly tie into what we're going to talk about next. Before we finish up with what the UFC needs to do with Dana White, okay? But the reason why the UFC doesn't really care about promoting their fighters is because the UFC has built up such a huge hardcore fan base where a lot of fans pride themselves on being so hardcore. They'll watch every prelim on every Apex card. They've built up such a huge fan base, and I think a lot of that was due to the fact that they did a lot of work during 2020, where they were the only sport actually broadcasting for a few months, and a lot of new fans got converted into MMA hardcore fans. Now, the UFC has built such a massive fan base of just purists, hardcore fans that'll watch every single card, that they can literally just put on the shittiest bare minimum Apex cards, and it's a guaranteed win for them because they're going to be making money, because people are going to sit and watch a card from the first fight on the prelims all the way till the main event at 1 a.m. It'll be an Apex card. The main event's at 1 a.m. Like, who the fuck is going to stay up for some shit like that? Unless you're a hardcore fan, right? But there's a lot of hardcore fans, and what they're going to be doing is just sitting there watching the same ads over and over and over again. You're going to be watching the Burger King ad for the 10,000th time. You're going to be watching Love Me Chicken from Popeyes 50 times over. You're going to be watching I Want to Hang Out with Dustin Poirier. Yeah. You're going to be watching that ad for the 50th time. And it's because the UFC has basically, again, they built up this huge fan base now. And there's so many people that are just willing to eat shit week after week. That's why we're getting stuff like this. And I said it when they announced that they were going back to Canada. They always give Canada the shittiest cards possible. And you know what? After a couple of weeks after they announced Bilal Muhammad versus JDM, I was about to take that back. I said, Gilbert Burns and Morales are on the card. Benoit, Joel Alvarez are on the card. Guess what they did? They said, nope, that card is a little bit too good. We're going to take the Gilbert Burns fight away, which is a decent fight, which makes a big difference. If you only have 5 great fights on a pay-per-view, you take one of those away. Now you lose one more and it's totally shit, which is where we're at now. We've lost Benoit Saint Denis and Joel Alvarez, and it's totally shit. Why did the Gilbert Burns and Morales fight need to be taken off of a pay-per-view to main event at the Apex? I don't understand. Like, the UFC just needed another big main event. Burns versus Morales. Dude, I'm sorry. Gilbert Burns should not be main eventing in 2025. The last time against Sean Brady, that was the last time Gilbert Burns should have been main eventing. He's taken too many L's. He's out of his prime. Listen, this is a perfect fight to have. Like the second fight of a pay-per-view. We like Gilbert Burns. Morales is an interesting prospect. It's a good fight for a pay-per-view card. We didn't need an entire fight night just for this. Just so you could steal a fight that actually gave value to UFC 315. But no. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. There are so many hardcore fans, and I'm one of them too. I'm even looking at this card, and I'm like, well, actually, Rodolfo Bellato, man. Paul Craig, Rodolfo Bellato. That's actually good. Yo, Sadiq Youssef versus the prospect Myron Santos. Wait a second. We got something. Stolz versus Boyev. You know? Wait a second. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to tune in for the whole card. Yo, Gordon versus Thiago Moises, man. The UFC knows that they have a huge fan base. Where even someone like Jared Gordon, you look at him on a card and you're like, wait, that's actually a kind of good fight. You know? So that they can just keep pumping out dog shit. And you're going to have to sit through Elise Reed and Denise Gomez and Tisha Pennington, Luana Pinheiro. You're going to have to sit through Yadier Del Valle and Hyung-Sung Park. They're just pulling people off of the street at this point just so that they can run ads all night. And people are going to watch it. And the UFC is no longer trying to grow the sport because they've already grown it, and they're making huge profit margins because they don't have a lot of overhead costs, given that they're not even going on the road. They're chilling at the Apex. They have hardly any expenses. It's pretty easy for them to put on a show when there's so many people tuning in, and they have so many of these shitty events every single year that they're just rolling in the dough. Dana White doesn't give a fuck, right? The thing is, you need someone that's passionate about the game that actually wants to grow the sport. We don't need so many Apex cards as well, right? Quality over quantity. I know there's some fans that are going to be like, fuck that, man. I want a fight night every single week. I don't really care as long as it's some good scraps, man. As long as it's some good scraps, I'm kicking my feet up and I'm cracking a brewski. Dude, you may as well watch Cage Warriors. You may as well watch. There's other MMA promotions. You've got ONE FC. They're doing Muay Thai. You've got boxing. There's other shit going on if you're that obsessed. But like, listen, people are going to be like, why do you care so much if Gilbert Burns isn't on 315? At least you get to see him fight the week after. Because I don't want to sit through a shit Apex card just for Gilbert Burns main event at 12 a.m. midnight. I know this is actually, it's going to be like 10 p.m., but you get my point, dude. If he's on 315, I'm more hyped for the main card. Do you not understand? And I'm paying for the pay-per-view. That's $80, and it's going to be more worth it. You know? At least make him somewhat worth it. I mean, it's really worth like $30, but you get my point. And look at this. Blanchfield versus Barber. And this is the most pathetic thing about this one. Look at this poster. Bad to the bone. Blanchfield versus Barber, man. Every single time you have a fight between two women that are actually pretty good, and you sort of gaslight yourself into thinking, okay, well, let's be fair. This is actually a sort of skilled fight. You forget that it's still WMMA and you actually think it's going to be entertaining, and it's still like a 5-round stinkfest. I remember there was what was it? I think it was Blanchfield versus Santos or something like that. After Santos had a good fight with Valentina Shevchenko, I actually was like, okay, I'll give this a chance. And it was absolute dog shit. This is the thing I have a real problem with. Mateusz Gamrot and Ludovic Klein. Sick fight. Why is this the co-main event to Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber? Do not sit there and tell me that Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber is a bigger fight. It's going to bring in more eyes. There's more hype. There is more hype on Billy Ray Goff and Song Yong KO than Aaron Blanchfield versus Macy Barber. I don't care if Macy Barber, if the commentators are friends with her, and when she's walking out, the commentators are saying, man, Macy Barber's a real tough cookie. And don't forget, man, she'll even steal the thing. You know, they'll have like some stupid inside joke. But Erin Blanchfield, I mean, she's got quite the tough cookie look, too, man. You don't want to mess with her. Actually, I'm more hyped for Dustin Jacoby versus Bruno Lopez. I actually am more hyped for Andreas Gustafsson, new fighter from Sweden, versus Jeremiah Wells. I'm telling you right now, everyone that's watching this video agrees with me, that fight is more hype. I understand this shouldn't be the main event. Okay, whatever. Why the fuck is Mateusz Gamrot and Ludovic Klein not the main event? Why is this even a card to begin with? If the UFC wants to put on shit Apex cards, just have it all be shit at least. But you could have put Gamrot and Ludovic Klein on UFC 315. UFC 315 was an okay card, but they didn't stack it that much, and they just had to get rid of Gilbert Burns versus Morales. It was too stacked. Burns versus Morales was hogging up space. Nobody needed to see that. You guys definitely wanted to see Andrade and Jesuda Vicious, and you definitely wanted to see Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. Bro, don't even talk about Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. Now you're biting off more than you can chew. That fight is actually way sicker than every other one. No, don't even start. Okay? Mateusz Gamrot and Ludovic Klein could have been on the main card. You could have kept Gilbert Burns. And you know what? You could have just took those two shitty Apex cards that are totally unnecessary to begin with and just combined them. You should have just done that. Now Benoit St. Denis and Joel Alvarez is off. It's totally a shit card. Mike Mallet and Charles Radke on the main card. This sucks. But guess what? If they actually kept the Burns fight on and they didn't have a Gamrot, that's the thing though. They want to put one decent, intriguing fight for the hardcore fans in Gamrot and Klein on an Apex card because they know that there are suckers that are going to watch the whole thing just for that. And I don't completely blame them. That's a good fight, but that's how they get you. They should have put it on here. We lose this fight. Okay, we're all good. Bump Gamrot and Ludovic to the main card. Okay, we still got Burns on it. Now it fucking sucks, dude. Now we have to sit through two dog shit Apex cards back to back just for two decent fights. But there's still a huge hardcore fan base, and I'm a hardcore fan too, because I understand it, that are going to watch this whole card and they're going to justify it by saying Rodolfo Bellato Paul Craig is a sick one. And it is a decent fight. Sadiq Youssef versus Myron Santos. There's some intrigue there, right? Dustin Stoltzfus versus Ruzy Boy. That's okay. But like, come on, man. The UFC is just going to continue to do this if we keep watching this stuff. You know, I'm not saying they shouldn't have Apex cards. I'm not saying every single fight night has to be stacked like the Abu Dhabi ones or the Saudi Arabia ones. I'm not saying that. Every once in a while, it's okay to have an Apex card, but they just created one of these on the spot just so that they can run more ads. That's what I'm telling you. They have all of these just so that they can run more ads because they no longer care about growing the sport. They no longer care about selling pay-per-views because we're in the streaming era and they've been struggling to sell them to begin with. And they're at the point where because all of the guys that were actually passionate sold their shares, now it's not even that they want to make as much profit as possible. That's actually not it. They're comfortable with the profits that they're getting right now, that they can do the bare minimum. And fans will eat it up because they have a huge fan base of people that watch anything that they put out. And what I'm saying is, I feel like as UFC fans, if we actually want to see some change, we can't be sitting through these shit Apex cards, dude. That might be the only thing. The only thing that could actually change this is if the UFC sees a substantial drop in viewership on these Apex cards. Probably the only thing that would work. If nobody watches these dog shit Apex cards. Okay? And fans actually demand quality. They've not even announced the main event for International Fight Week. It's bad because that could be Topuria versus Makhachev, which is one of the biggest fights, potentially one of the biggest fights you could make in UFC history. We're like 6 weeks away from that card, and they're not going to even think about promoting it until we get done with UFC 315. Because Islam Makhachev's waiting to see who wins. So they're only going to promote it for 5 fucking weeks. It could be a huge thing. You could have a whole world tour, do a press conference in Spain. You could have both of them go on ESPN. You could do a face-to-face. We know they're not going to do that. And you know why? Because the face-to-face is probably only going to be agreed upon if the fighters have like a 12 weeks camp. They're going to have like a 5-week short notice camp. No, I can't do the face-to-face. I'm training. So they fucking missed the opportunity. They're dropping the ball with UFC 315. They're dropping the ball with John Jones and Tom Aspinall. We're never going to get that fight. It's pathetic. And now we've got Dana White doing more for his biggest competitor, which is just boxing as a whole, than he's doing for the UFC. This is the super fight that boxing fans want to see. Topuria, Makhachev, Jones, Aspinall, Dana White, you would never see him actually push for it. We cannot have our promoter for the UFC. And the reason why I say our and I'm invested in the UFC is because I'm a UFC fan. I'll sit here and I'll admit that even though it seems to be declining in quality a little bit, it's still by far the best MMA promotion. Because other MMA promotions are just shit, let's be honest. The UFC is still way better. They're leagues ahead. But they're leaving so much stuff on the table, man. They used to do a lot more as well. And your promoter should not be fucking around with power slap and boxing and whatnot. Like, the UFC's promoter should only promote the UFC. And I think it's time that we cast Dana White to the side. Listen, Dana White, I'd like him to be involved in the UFC. I think it's good to have him involved. But I don't think he can be relied upon to be like the main promoter anymore. He's done a lot for the sport. It's good that he's in the picture, but I'm just saying you can't rely on him anymore. I think we need someone new. Is it Hunter Campbell? I don't know if Hunter Campbell has the enthusiasm. I don't know if Hunter Campbell has the personality. I mean, it's one thing if you're working really hard behind the scenes and he's making a lot of things happen, but you kind of need like a Dana White figure. You need to have someone that can get on the mic and hype up a fight the way that Dana White was hyping up Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. You need someone that's going to go on national television and not talk in a monotoned way. Again, Dana White, I think he should be in the picture, but he cannot be the number one go-to guy anymore. And Dana White is still being treated as like the same guy in 2015 where he actually had stake in the company and, you know, he was promoting the hell out of the UFC at the time in 2015, 2016, really promoting it. 2020, he was riding hard for the UFC, but now look at this, man. What about your own promotion? Oh, he sold his shares. Okay, so then why is this still the guy then? Why is this still the one that, you know, is supposed to hype up fights? And Dana White doesn't only hype up fights, but he has a big sway on which fights are going to happen, right? I mean, even though he sold his stakes, Dana White, I mean, he's a guy that holds a grudge. If you pull out of a fight like Arman Tsarukyan, and Dana White doesn't like it, he's going to see that that fight might not get made. The Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev fight. I don't want Dana White, someone that honestly couldn't give less of a fuck at this point, it seems, if you're looking at this photo. I don't want a guy that cares more about power slap to have the power to say, fuck that. I don't care if the fans want it. We're not going to make it happen. I don't think that's a good idea. You have to be UFC only, dude. All right, I'm nominating myself and throwing my name in the hat. You guys know I'd be a good promoter. Fuck it, do Michael Bisping, bro. Just somebody that can hype things up. Some people are going to say, no. But Bisping as a commentator would be different. I feel like, you know, Bisping, he gets tomato red in the face when he's screaming, oh, you know, yeah, oh, Izzy landed the leg kick. You know, you could see Bisping talking about Islam Makhachev, and he could get hyped up talking about some stuff, right? Who else, man? I don't know, bro. Chael, fuck that, dude. Chael's gonna make some bonehead fights. Chael's gonna be like, who wouldn't want to see Islam Makhachev versus Gamrot? I mean, who wouldn't want to see Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker too? Dan Hooker's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. Who wouldn't want to see that right now? Because Topuria, he hasn't earned his chops. He's still a small fry. Yeah, I don't want old man Chael Sonnen, totally out of touch with modern day MMA, to be the promoter. Because the thing is, you can't have someone that's just delusional that'll promote anything. Okay? You got to be able to promote the fighters that are fighting, but first and foremost, you got to make the right fights. So I don't want Chael Sonnen with any power to be a matchmaker, because I know that Chael Sonnen, he's the kind of guy, you know, and maybe this is just because he's, you know, with the UFC now, and whatever the UFC does, he'll like. But, like, you know, Chael Sonnen's the kind of guy to be like, I call for Paddy Pimblett to fight double champ status right now. He'd probably do some shit like that. Again, Dana, he can stick around a little bit, but we cannot rely on him. We need someone new. We need a new guy going on ESPN MMA. All right? We need a new guy at the press conferences. Because Dana White, the only guy that he's actually really been promoting as of recent is John Jones. Who else? When's the last time you heard Dana White go on a rant about how good a UFC fighter is, right? You'll have someone dominate in a title fight, and the most he'll say is, yeah, they look great tonight. Yeah. They look great tonight. Yeah. That's all he'll say, right? Merab beats Umar. Man, Merab looked okay. He looked okay tonight. That's basically it. What happened to Max Holloway? I want Dana White that was promoting UFC 300. And I know, you know, Dana White, he clowned me because I was making fun of UFC 300, and it actually turned out to be pretty good, to be honest. I'll admit I was wrong about UFC 300, but still, man, we need some of that energy back. So if I think Dana White could do a great job if he actually focused on it, but I don't think he's going to focus on it. I don't think he cares anymore. So we need a new promoter, and I don't know who it's going to be, but the UFC needs some energy again, and it needs someone that actually gives a fuck about the sport and wants to grow it. The sport is not going to grow. They're not going to be pushing for better things, bigger and better things. They're not going to be pushing for more entertainment. How do we entertain the fans even more? How do we get better every single year? That's what the UFC should be doing. That's what the UFC's promoter should be doing. That should be their goal. It shouldn't just be, all right, yep, I'm doing the media scrum. All right, man, I got to take a break from Power Slap for a second. All right, let me just get this out of the way real quick. Yep, film the embeddeds and who gives a fuck. Yeah, I think it's time we start calling this out, guys. I think it's time. And again, I don't know if anything's going to change if people continue to just lap up these shitty Apex cards week after week. I know there's a lot of hardcore fans that watch the sport, and it's not all about proving that you're a hardcore fan. I get that. We like fights, but if you're watching every single card, I mean, what do you expect the UFC to do? If they think, okay, the people will watch anything we put out, so it doesn't even matter. We don't even have to lift a pinky to expend any effort on actually making fights people care about or making cards that are actually decent. Why would we do that if people are going to watch anyway? Right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Mateusz Rąbecki, by the way, he's offering to step in for Benoit Saint-Denis. I would love to see this. First off, I just don't want Benoit to fight Joel Alvarez. That is a nightmare matchup. I'd much rather see him fight someone like Rąbecki. I hope that they can make this fight because UFC 315 desperately needs it. Rąbecki is asking for a main event, a fight night main event, though. Oh, wait a second. I think he might actually be saying he wants to step in for 315, so never mind. But I don't want the UFC to make this fight for another card. If Rąbecki's ready to step in on short notice, let's see this fight, please. Let's hope that the UFC can put this together. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.